Shabbat Shalom and Gamar Chatima Tova.
Shabbat Shalom.
I'll take a Shana Tova, that's okay. I know Gamar Chatima Tova doesn't always roll off the lips. It's reminding us that we should be sealed for a good year, which is saying that I would not presume that you have not already been written for a good year. So therefore, I will simply ask that you be sealed for the good year. To wish someone a Shana Tova hints that maybe it's still in doubt. But let's be honest, it might still be in doubt. That's one of the questions that Rosh Hashanah asks us, that confronts us with, are we sure we've done everything we can to ensure that the next year is going to be as good as possible? Now that may seem like an obvious question, and for most Jewish people it is. But I will tell you that when I visit non-Jewish organizations and share some of Judaism's perspective, they often are scratching their head at this point. I've actually taken to beginning my lectures when I deal with an interfaith group or when I'm working with a world's religion class at one of the local colleges or universities. I begin by trying to tell them that, look, all religions are essentially trying to answer the same question. They have a lot of differences, but this one question is relatively universal. Why is life rotten? Why are things bad? Or, in the colloquial language of the young people, why does life suck? Because this is a question that has been asked for 10,000 years. Because there is an intuitive sense that things aren't as good as they could be. And why not? And every religion has a different form of answer to that particular question. Some say, well, because this whole world is terrible, and therefore don't expect it to be better than that. When you're dead, that's when things get good. And in the meantime, yes, it's just going to keep going like this. Or, don't worry about it, this world isn't important. You're going to get born again, and again, and again, and again, and eventually for you it'll be good, even though you may have to go through a whole bunch of lifetimes before it actually gets good, and the person who goes through that lifetime won't remember it by the time it gets good, but that's a whole nother conversation. But in Judaism, we actually have a very different explanation for why life ain't good the way it's supposed to be. Well, I say we have an explanation. We have a set of explanations because, like everything else in Judaism, it's complicated. It's never so simple as to fit on a bumper sticker. But we can try to reduce it to a few simple points to remember. There are 4 things that I want you to remember about why life isn't as good as it should be. The first is that things break. This is the most obvious and the most simple to understand. Life is not as good as we want it to be because in our mind we imagine some mythical level of perfection that simply doesn't occur when we're made out of cells. Right? We are made out of stuff, and stuff breaks. And when stuff breaks and you're in it, it's gonna hurt. So when the hurricane blows over the tree and it crushes your house, well, houses get broken because trees get broken because all of them are made out of stuff and stuff breaks. And that is simply a factor of being made out of things. And it's essential to be made out of stuff because if stuff couldn't break, then stuff couldn't change. And if stuff couldn't change, stuff could never be different than it originally was. And a static universe, a static life, is not one that actually has life. Life is built upon the possibility of change, of the inevitability of change. So, right off the bat, much of what we suffer through is going to happen simply because that's part of what it is to be a flesh and blood creature. 2, much of what we think isn't so good in life is because what we actually want in life, what we imagine would make us happy, wouldn't actually make us happy or would be immoral to have. In the immortal words of Conan the Barbarian, what is good in life is to hear the cry of your enemy, to hear the lament of his womenfolk, and to crush them under your heel. Okay, if you were among his tribe and not succeeding like Conan did, then you would probably think life wasn't good the way it was supposed to be either. Well, that's not life's fault, and it's certainly not God's fault. That's you've got the wrong expectation. If you believe that life is only good, if you have the Lamborghini, the 5 homes, and the supermodels at your beck and call, then I've got news for you. Life is not going to feel good for the vast majority of people, and even for those that are able to achieve, if that's the right word, that style of living. they will find as well that it doesn't come with the goodness that they were perhaps hoping for. That it doesn't bring a sense of satisfaction and a sense of happiness the way many other parts of life can. So, life is sometimes not good because we break. Life is sometimes not good because what we think would be good for us, in fact, is not what we can get or should get. And that brings us then to number 3, where even where we think about something that would be good and it would be fine, there are sometimes wrinkles within the world that were we to have it, things would not necessarily be as good as we had hoped them to be, but we would be blind to what we were missing out on. Sounds complicated. Let me give you a straightforward example from personal experience. When I was a young undergrad, 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago, I had in mind that I was going to become a professor. I was going to apply to grad school. I was top of my class, I'm doing great, and I applied, and I got in nowhere. Well, that's a kick in the teeth. And I was beside myself with disappointment, trying to reshape what I was going to do, having to tack, and, quite very much upset. But, of course, because of that decision, or multiple decisions of rejection, I ended up eventually in Japan, where I first of all learned that I loved teaching more than I had ever expected to do. Second of all, I found the person that I loved more than I expected to do. And 3, came to a realization that by being more responsible for my own Judaism, that indeed this was something that was part of my true calling in life. And eventually made the decision to enter the rabbinate. Had I got what I wanted, which was a perfectly legitimate goal, this is not the Lamborghini model of wanting, this is a perfectly legitimate want of wanting to go into a grad school, I would not have encountered any one of those 3 experiences. And at this point, I would probably be a miserable professor somewhere, rather than the happy person that I am. In hindsight, I can see that. At the time, of course, my disappointment was more palpable. But thankfully, with wisdom and good experiences, I can recognize that having those rejections actually was a good thing for me, even though it didn't feel good at the time. So, we're on to number 3. Everybody's good with those 3, right? Things break. Some of what you want you shouldn't want, and it wouldn't make you happy anyway. Some of what you want is perfectly fine, but you also still shouldn't have it because there are better things waiting for you down a different path that you have yet to imagine. And then we have number 4, which is the biggie. Life often sucks because people make bad decisions. Done. A huge portion of human suffering is caused not because of trees falling in hurricanes, not because we set ourselves up to fail by chasing after ridiculous goals, or not even because some of our dreams don't come true and we find a better path, but because we constantly make bad choices and others around us make bad choices for us. Life is created out of the combined effect of the millions of small choices that we all make collectively and individually. And the cumulative weight of those choices will change what a person, what a community, what a country, what a world heads towards. But that's where we're in luck when it comes to Rosh Hashanah and these days of repentance. Because we are reminded that while there are some things beyond our control, the falling trees, and there are some things that we won't know until we have hindsight, the decisions that happen that we weren't sure would be good but work out fine, we do have at least 2 things in control. We can properly gauge what should be our desires and what should not be, something that tefillah and study help guide us towards, away from the wish list of Lamborghinis and Versace bags and into things that are more worthwhile. But more importantly, to constantly understand that what is most in our control is what I do next, is what I do this moment in my life. Am I choosing at this moment to do what is right for this moment? If we are able to weigh our decisions each and every moment and try to work our way towards what is right, or at least a little bit less wrong than it might otherwise have been, And then we find that a huge portion of either our personal suffering or the suffering of others around us is diminished. Now, no one person is responsible for all the choices within their own life or within the rest of the community, as we are constantly being impacted, sometimes literally, by the other people around us that are also making sometimes poor choices and sometimes good ones. That extra extension of help or friendship from someone that was unexpected, that extra little bit of support, this allows our life to be better because they made that choice, and in turn, when we make a similar choice for them or someone else, we are helping as well. Judaism believes in the power of each person and us collectively to make things better simply by choosing to do better. By giving us that power, by giving us that agency, Judaism is putting a great deal of faith in you. And this is one of the ultimate messages of Rosh Hashanah and ultimately in a few more days, Yom Kippur. It's that it's up to you. You get to choose. And if you feel that there are things that you have done that are not quite right, you can fix them. There is no permanent record that can never be expunged. We do teshuvah. We admit we did it. We admit that it was wrong and a mistake. We feel regret for what we did, and then we make amends. If it is between us and God, it's very straightforward. Talk to the Creator. Everything will be worked out. If it was between you and someone else, it's a little bit more complicated. Go and talk to that person. Explain what you did, not as an excuse, but as an admission of guilt. I was wrong. What I did was wrong. I am sorry that I hurt you, and it hurts me that I did this thing. I want to make it up to you. I want to fix it. I want to make it right. You will find that with this in mind, we are able to repair breaches in relationships that perhaps you have thought were broken. Perhaps you have thought are lost causes. We have that capability. That is what Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are telling us each and every year, and what our faith tells us each and every day. You have that power. Life doesn't have to suck. There are ways together that we can work to mitigate those other problems, the falling trees and broken limbs, the other things that we may not have as much agency over, we still have capacity to fix, remedy, and protect ourselves from. But first and foremost, we need to work on the things that are obviously within our authority, within our power. So rather than shaking our fist at heaven, and rather than shaking our fist at others, we beat our chest, we admit what we did wrong, we do better. That's what it is to be a Jew. Shabbat Shalom and Gemar Chatima Tova.